to, and I guess again, welcome you. I don't know how that works, to a bona fide episode of the podcast in front of actual humans. Got to be honest, when we did this for the first time, we were on a softball field, and I'm very glad to say that Bill Figge is here today, who was in the first episode. He was my first guest. We talked about the softball team. So welcome back, Bill. How are you? You can say that you were there for the first one and for the first live one. The only person in the room that can do that. That's great. All right, before we get started, let me go around and introduce everybody. Or actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and give folks a little bit of a taste of who you are. You have to go last. No, you have to go last. We'll start on the end with Stephanie.
Of course, I have to go first. I'm Stephanie Brown. I'm the Director of Procurement.
Jesse Smith, Deputy County Administrator for Community Development. Also, like Dr. Murray, a lifelong Chesterfield resident, graduate of Manchester High School a few years before him.
Hi, I'm Katie Cominsky. I'm the Social Media Coordinator for Chesterfield County.
And last but not least, I'm Joe Casey. Pleasure of serving as your County Administrator and pleasure of serving amongst the 5 Board of Supervisors that are in the room today. Thank you.
Well, folks, I really appreciate your time. And again, just like with Dr. Murray and Colonel Carpenter, being along with me for this journey. Dr. Casey, I'll start with you. When we watched that video, when we mentioned it earlier, just a number of, I feel like every time I turned around, there was another ribbon cutting, another groundbreaking, all kinds of fun things. When you look back at the year that was 2024, what are some of the things that really stand out to you? And give me some of your thoughts on the year that was 2024 so far.
Well, seeing all those ribbons cut and dirt flying around, it reminds me of my mom used to always tell me, don't get your good shoes dirty and don't run with scissors. So I may have to ask for my mother's forgiveness because that's all we seem to do over the last year. And it's not just me. Hopefully you saw the line of people who were part of that exercise, board members, school board members, fire personnel, citizens, partners, students. So again, it's not just me running around. We are all running hard each and every day. You know, just seeing that, and we went to what's called a topping out ceremony this last year with Springline with the Timmons project, you know, and it clicked on me, you know, the private sector can't have all that fun. So I've talked to Dr. Murray and our general services, and we need, you know, the ribbon cutting and the groundbreaking, but we probably need to celebrate in between also. Topping out ceremonies where everybody kind of signs the steel beam. It's the last beam put into the structure. Big moment in a construction project. And I just look forward to the day to seeing a lot of students sign their names with their parents and just have that sense and feeling of accomplishment. My kids did that actually at Lynchburg Steel many years ago as part of the 911 Freedom Tower project, where they invited anyone to come sign a beam. And my kids still talk about that as a powerful memory. So I did get Dr. Murray's clearance that actually may be a permissible activity. And if we have to adjust his contracts in some of these new schools just for a pause in construction, then so be it. But, you know, this last year, you know, whether it's, you know, public facilities, fire stations, schools, you know, parks and other facilities, GRTC transit routes, it's all the other partnerships that we have, and new businesses, new medical facilities, new affordable housing projects, new trails, and so forth. So each and every one of them has their own partnership and contingency of an audience that comes out, and each one is special. There's, you know, we saw a new business open up where it was a family having their first bricks and mortar owned business, small business, to an international company that's trusting us as a community with their international investment. We're there seeing somebody who's needing the housing services, the transit services, maybe addiction recovery services, medical services, enabling them to not traverse as far, or our EMS to traverse as far. So we're all working together to really listen. And my theme for today is really just the team that we are. You're seeing Team Chesterfield up here. There's many localities that would never have a police chief and a school superintendent sitting next to each other, or at least being part of this exercise. Right. And that's who we are. We are a team, but you are the team owners, the citizens and business of Chesterfield County. You pick, you know, in essence, the general manager of this team, 5 elected officials on the board side, 5 on the school side. The general managers pick the coach. And just like everything in sports, you know, if the coach is having a bad year, you get a different coach, I think, the next year. So you can be coach of the year one year, but, you know, come January 1st, I got to start winning again. So thank you.
Jesse, one of the things, so Dr. Casey touched on a lot of different things. He did not specifically mention transportation specifically, but I feel like there's so much news, so to speak, right? So much to update on. And if you think about last year's State of the County, transportation was obviously a huge portion of that. When we look at various projects, be it Powell Height, Woolridge, all those kinds of things, give me some updates on the transportation side, and what kind of information do folks need to know about the transportation aspects on your plate?
Sure. Yeah, I think the one that we always get the most questions about is the Powell Height Parkway, however you want to pronounce it. I grew up here, so I'll call it Powhite.
It's Powhite, for sure.
I'm going with Powhite then. So, yeah, I mean, that's been a topic of conversation as long as I can remember. I've been with the county for 23-ish years now, and we've been talking about it ever since I've been there. This is the closest we've ever been to actually constructing the Powhite Parkway extension. So I did want to say, thank you to the Virginia Department of Transportation. They're currently handling the environmental document for us. We actually had a large community meeting here about a month ago to go over multiple alignment alternatives and really allow folks to give input on what they want to see. All told, I would say we're probably still about a year away from having environmental permit in hand to be able to build that. Once we have that, then it's really just a small matter of a few $100 million to actually build it.
Just a few.
Just a few. And we used to always think that was insurmountable, but I will say, with the support of this board, we had our largest single issuance for transportation project solely, which was $300 million, which we've never done before. When I started here, if we did 5 or 10 million, we thought we were doing a lot. Now we have $300 million, and I've been told we have to spend it all within 3 years. So we've got our work cut out for us, but the good part of that is there's plenty of work, and building schools and providing infrastructure, all of that ties together. So we're doing lots of stuff, but certainly excited to do it.
And in addition to that, you've obviously got Woolridge, you've got Nash. Any updates on that for folks?
So Nash Road, it's about a $40 million project for those that you live, in the Highlands or points east of here. It's under construction now. The big excitement on that one is that, during construction, we found not one, but 18 bodies buried in the ground that we didn't know were there. So we dealt with that. We've relocated those folks and been very reverent, found ancestors and all that. So it's a little bit of a hiccup, but still moving. Woolridge Road, we anticipate that connection from Old Hunter to 288, which finishes out that interchange, will be under construction next year. So just really excited for both of those projects to either get to completion or construction.
Katie, I don't know, in Dr. Casey's little analogy there, which was fantastic, by the way, and I'm totally stealing that at some point. The GM, coach, I don't know where we are. I don't know if that makes me the bat boy. I think
I'm just the personality hire. I don't really know.
You know what you are? You're the person on the microphone that hypes up the crowd.
Yep.
And then they get T-shirts and such.
For sure.
But on a serious note, though, one of the challenges of your job, right, is on a daily basis, you're trying to take things like Jesse just talking about transportation, which is, again, very important information, right? But you're trying to make it interesting, right? You're trying to make it fun. You're making it engaging. And I'm just curious.
It was not interesting and fun.
No, you did a great job. It was awesome. I learned things.
That wasn't what I said at all. But in terms of, how do you do that? I'm guessing this is a question you get a lot from people who follow any of our social accounts, which, for the record, if you're not, you should be, because folks like her do an incredible job. But in terms of making government interesting and fun, how do you do that?
Well, I know all of you follow government accounts for fun. That's what I do in my spare time. No, sometimes it's very dry. And I think it comes back to, Dr. Casey has said this a few times, that you think initially that government is boring until you start to sift through it, right? And you realize that government is for people. It's made up of people. People are behind the government. And so when you find out that there's resources, real resources in your community that are for you, that's exciting. You have to sometimes put a spin on it, right? You're going to hear trending sounds. You might see us dancing sometimes, some of the silly stuff, but there's always a reason behind that. And so it's intentional. You take the time to figure out how to connect with people, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that we are serving.
Yeah, and I feel like every time I turn around, you're asking one of us. Do you do this do you go to their offices and ask them to do silly stuff like look sad because everybody else is joking about
You're
Spotify
really
rap?
good at that. Like,
What,
if
the
you need a
looking
guy
sad?
to kind of look
I
sad
don't know what
off
that
the
is waiting
distance,
for our
that's like
turn.
he's good at that. Yeah,
I
I
don't know
know.
what that says
Procurement
about
wants
me.
to, yes.
I don't know what that says about me. In terms of making things interesting and fun, Stephanie, let's talk about procurement. It's because I love, I kid because I love. So in terms of trying to make things interesting, right, or in maybe even not the interesting piece, just to educate. I feel like for your shop, there's a lot of that because as most folks in this room probably know, or maybe even you don't. Let's start here. How would you sort of define what procurement is, and can you help maybe demystify the process of how all of it works?
I'd like to say it's magic, but in actuality, there's a lot more paperwork, so it's not magic. Simplified, I would say that we are the department that is obtaining goods and services so that the county and schools can do their job. We are kind of the backbone, and we are behind the scenes many times, but we are in that support role to make sure that everything is working properly. And yes, it is a little confusing sometimes. Maybe think of us as professional shoppers, and instead of trying to find Black Friday deals, we're out negotiating contracts for fire trucks, the new school construction that you saw, anything and everything that the county needs, our life-saving AED supplies.
And in the process of doing that, are there certain, I don't know, call them standards, but how do you make sure that process, one thing to the next, happens the same way?
So there are rules and regulations that we have to follow. We have
Right.
a team that works very diligently to ensure that, we're not only following the rules, but we are obtaining the best value for our taxpayers.
Yeah.
They will definitely let you know if you're not following the rules.
True
I
story.
will confirm that for sure.
Dr. Casey, obviously one of the things that we put a lot of emphasis into the idea of strategic thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And making plans, whether that's succession planning, whether that's down the road, just kind of looking ahead. And for us, Blueprint Chesterfield is obviously a big part of how we go about sort of looking at the priorities and the plans for the future. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how you would explain the foundational nature of Blueprint Chesterfield and why that's so important to the organization as a whole.
Sure, and real quickly, I just want to go backwards because Stephanie doesn't like to have shout-outs about her, but she was a top finalist nationally for what she does in procurement, one of the top 3 people across the country. So there you go.
Thank you, Dr. Casey.
I tried getting her here to come to a board meeting for recognition, so I had to actually get her as part of this to recognize her. And the other thing I didn't mean to leave out transportation and all our celebrations. It's just that ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings, especially ribbon cuttings on a road, while everyone's honking behind you, is not the most good backdrop.
That's very true.
We need our people to get through the road and not be waiting for it. So, but the Poet extension is perfectly positioned for a ribbon cutting and a groundbreaking. And I like to announce, actually, when we do that, will be also the announcement of the taking down of the VDOT extension tolls. So that 75-cent toll, there you go.
Now, see, I thought you were about to say that we were going to do another podcast there, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, take down that toll, Mr. Gorbachev, as someone told me once. But
Russia does not control the tolls, just so we're clear. This is...
But in fairness, VDOT is a partner in that, and VDOT and the county made a promise many years ago that once the bonds were paid off by those that use the road, the tolls come down. So I want to give a shout out to VDOT. That's a transition process. It's actually a last project, but again, both of those may be occurring around the same time, so everyone is invited. Going back to Blueprint, yeah, honestly, when I did my research about coming to Chesterfield County, I wasn't homegrown like some of the predecessors that were up here on stage just a moment ago. I came from across the river, and so I did a lot of research. If this is where I wanted to set up not just a job, but my home for the rest of my professional career. And Blueprint was one of those pieces and parts. I'll give credit to my predecessor. Some of them are still working with the county. And for those that don't know, that's sort of the county's way of saying strategic plan. And I looked at a lot of organizations over my career, public and private, especially when I was in the private sector. And people write these strategic plans that are 100-plus pages, and they're so detailed and onerous, and so many things that they're listing, and you have no idea what's important to them, and then you have no idea what they're actually doing every day. And nobody reads it except for the person who wrote it. So, what Chesterfield's blueprint is actually on one sheet of paper. There's basically 6 phrases as far as what we want to keep our focus on. Excellence in public service, community and individual wellness, safe and secure community, thriving communities, lifetime learning, and vibrant economy. So that's basically who we are. And each and every one of us works every day, not just through one of them, but possibly all of them together. And, we also have very simple phrases for each one, like 3 or 4 bullets below each one. And using the schools as an example, that they are, noted really in essence throughout all of it, if you think about it. But as far as the focal point of, again, the lifetime learning, we have something for schools called, lifelong student progress and success. Pretty simple. What's behind it may be more complicated. What's behind it's lots of pieces and parts that have to work together between schools and counties. But more so, what I like about our blueprint, this isn't the county's document, it is the people's document, it's the business's document. We wouldn't be able to do this at all without all the partnerships that we have in place and all the ones that we're trying to acquire each and every day. That is also part of the team.
And Stephanie, I feel like, with priorities for the organization, one of the priorities I know for your department is to speak directly to folks, many of them maybe even like folks in this room, right? Because I feel like a lot of folks on this stage, we talk to people out there, right? But yours might be one that fits perfect for this specific room because the county is, for lack of a description, and even it sounds cliche, open for business, right? How do you define that? What does that mean to you for the county to be open for business? And what are sort of maybe the central tenets, so to speak, of how you guys go about doing what you do?
I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to the room, knowing that we have a lot of business owners here today, and we are absolutely open for business. We appreciate the opportunity to connect with the local businesses and want them to participate in the process. We operate out of fairness. We want to have an open process, and we want to have accessibility. And sometimes, participating in government procurement can be a little bit intimidating if you've never done it. And what we hope to do is to, meet you where you are, be a resource to you to help you understand what that process is, be available to answer questions. We have an e-procurement system where we publish all of our and push out all of the opportunities that are available. So if you're interested in doing business with the county, we encourage you to register. And, even if you're not registered, you can view our website and, look at any opportunities at any time, even without registration. We need to boost our clicks because I'm pretty sure we're nowhere near the county's social media sites.
Speaking of social media, God, that was a heck of a segue. Well done. Katie, we talked a little bit about making things interesting and fun, and there's information that we have to share on a regular basis, right? And you do that across social media. And I'm just curious, what would you say are kind of those central tenets for how you go about doing your job as a social media coordinator and helping to share that information and get stuff out?
Yeah. So Jesse talked about being here for 23 years, right? It's amazing. This is my first year in this role, and I feel like it helps me think of things from a different perspective, from a fresh perspective. So 2024 has looked like maybe just readjusting what our central tenets are. One of the things that I kind of coined is the EACH acronym. It's, engaging your audience with accurate information creatively through hooks or humor. It doesn't always have to be funny, but it needs to be engaging. Someone needs to have a reason to stop scrolling, because if you're like me and you're scrolling, you have maybe 3 seconds to get someone's attention. We know that, right? And so it's taking that extra step of, okay, if we know that we have to put out information about transportation or procurement or whatever it is, we need to make sure that it's something that someone's actually going to stop for. So taking that extra time to make it just a little bit flashy, whatever you have to do to get someone's attention so that they retain that information. That's why we retain, I'm sure lots of you can spit off lyrics from your favorite song or songs from 20 years ago. It's because there's that part of your brain that remembers things when you've chosen to put it in an engaging manner, in an engaging manner. Another thing that I really try to do is to use pictures and videos of real people in our community. It's one of my favorite things to do. Brad is all over our social media.
Okay, whoa, easy. I don't know all over. I'm not Debbie.
And you're not
Actually,
Debbie.
wait, hold on.
Nobody's
Let's do this.
Debbie.
Let's show them. Let's show them a little bit. Can you play the reel? Because speaking of Debbie, she'll be the one that you're all in love with at the end of this,
Yes,
okay?
Yes.
Some tour making music. Don't ask me how we did it. We just did it. It was hard.
Stay hydrated. Check on your friends and neighbors.
Go roaming with me, Arboretum Edition.
Oh, I wasn't sad. I just needed a...
Hey, I'm here for the shred event.
Oh, this is a paper shredding event.
Wrong event, Debbie.
Meet again, Sheriff. You're driving, and I'm still on the right side of the fence.
You might not be able to trust fall, but you can trust that we fall back this Sunday for daylight saving time. I think we did it!
See, I told you. See, yeah. How many for the one at the end? Because that's the big one, right? How many? Where are we at with that one? Last you checked.
I think we have like 8 million views or something.
Yeah. Debbie's a star.
She is,
Matter of fact, we
truly.
were going to bring her today and let her do this, but she
Yes.
said this was below her.
Yes.
So
She literally gets recognized in public. It's silly.
it is fun to walk through the county building with her because
Yeah.
people will see her walking and be like, because they all recognize her because she's all over. I
But it
can't believe
goes
you get her to
back
do the
that.
stuff you
Yeah,
do.
of using real people, right? People are tired of seeing just static images. Anybody can do that. And there's times where you have to do that, but if you can get someone behind you that believes in doing it with you, all of a sudden you've gotten them to buy into your community, into what's important at the end of the day.
Now, Jesse, one of the things I think that Katie gets the most questions about, or if it comes up, affordable housing is something I think that we get a lot of traction on social, whether it's folks commenting, folks asking questions, those kinds of things. I'm curious from your point of view, can you give me sort of, maybe it's best if we even define the term, what affordable housing really is, and then also, too, what are some of the things that Chesterfield's been working on in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to define affordable housing because it really depends on the person and their income, but sort of the traditional definition is someone that makes less than 60% of area median income. What can they afford? And that would be deemed affordable. When you get down to something like 30% of area median income, then you're in that deeply affordable range. Quite frankly, we really don't have any housing stock for sale in the county that most of those folks can even purchase. One exception, and you saw it in the video, is the Ettrick Landing project. So that was a partnership between us, the Maggie Walker Community Land Trust, to take what was the Ettrick Annex, right? An old school, we conveyed it to them, partnered with some of our nonprofits, and I'd be remiss to say that, we can't do any affordable housing, any rehab, any of that without our nonprofit partners. So we partnered with them to create 10 permanently affordable units in Ettrick, down at the southern end of the county. I will also say that the actual cost to build those homes, and I'm just using ballpark numbers, was about $400,000 each. We then used local, state, and federal subsidies to get them down to a sales price of around $200,000, so people in that 60% of AMI could even afford them. So it really takes a lot of things to make affordable housing happen. It's a combination of funding, political will. The board has been very supportive, and also partnerships with nonprofits.
And Dr. Casey, I feel like when you mentioned sort of priorities, you mentioned blueprint, I feel like in terms of the sort of big picture, there's lots of things that you're sort of, as a county, as an organization, that a lot of things we're sort of trying to figure out a way to address, right? Affordable housing being one of them. obviously you go about this, all of the work that you do, and you try to be transparent in the way that you're doing. And I know for you, transparency has obviously been a big focus. The financial transparency webpage, for example, was something we've added to the website recently. Why are things like that so important? Why is transparency so crucial, in your opinion, to an organization like ours?
Well, transparency like affordable housing has many definitions, and actually any definition that a citizen states as far as how they define transparency is the definition I will use. So it's a very elongated statement. But, government needs to have their people know who they are and what they're doing. As I mentioned, the strategic plan we have, it's a simple document, an easy read. We're not a top 10 list locality that these are our top things we're going to do this year. I've gotten in trouble with staff because I started outlining, here's all the things I want to do over the next year, and they have me usually stop at 80, saying that's enough for this year. But I'm like...
We made a mistake. It had him take the numbers away, so he took that as carte blanche. He could have as many as he wanted. So I think we got up to like page 15 one time, and we just had to say that's it. We can't take it anymore.
Because we're all things to all people. And when you have 380,000 people and thousands upon thousands of businesses. So my point is, we could be simplistic in saying, here's our top 10 things we want to do, but that's stopping and starting arbitrarily. There's so many people, so many needs, so many partnerships too. We have more than 10 partners, if you will, that we rely upon to do their share, nonprofit or otherwise. I see a few of them in the audience today. I see Chamber RVA, our higher ed partners with Brightpoint and Brian Stratton, and South University is here, GRP, RRT. I'm going to forget everything that's an acronym that you can put 3 or 4 letters together in different ways. They are all here, and they're all needed. It goes without saying. But going back to the word transparency, I'm actually the first person that all the new employees meet as part of employee orientation. And I don't know why we do it. We usually do it on the earliest, on a Monday morning, which is no way to start a job, but I'm the warm-up act for them. But what I do is I focus on earning the people's trust. And to me, that's so important. And trust to me is transparency leads in trust. And, the other words I use for the trust formula is, engagement, performance, and accountability. And all of them have to work together. If we have 12,000 employees between the counties and schools, we have to all earn people's trust each and every day incrementally as a team. And all it takes is one wayward employee to lose a citizen's trust. And I will tell you, while Katie is the expert in social media, the word that can spread about losing trust amongst a citizen to citizen will spread faster than any viral video that we would ever make. And we would never counter that. So we have to figure out how to step in and intervene. We all have bad days, and I tell all the new employees this, and I think Dr. Murray's side as well. If you're having a bad day, emotionally, physically, mentally, something's causing you not to be firing on all cylinders for which we need to do, tell your teammates that, hey, can you step in for me, help me? A great basketball team, the starter will say to the coach, don't put me in today. We're not going to win as much as we would with John Doe, who maybe sitting the bench. An even better team, the other teammates even recognize something's not right. We're not there yet, and I don't think any organization's there yet, but we're trying to be. But going back to transparency, it goes without saying, and I saw Thad Green from the Richmond Times-Dispatch here, great reporter, for the Times-Dispatch, but spread very thin. When I first came to Chesterfield County, I think there were over 100,000 printed editions of the Times-Dispatch. I've been using the Times-Dispatch since 1980s when I went to University of Richmond. Over 100,000 copies 10 years ago. There are 24,000 printed copies coming out today of the Times-Dispatch. 10 years ago or so, 70,000 Chesterfield Observer papers were sent out weekly, most of them to home addresses, free, gone. The Village News, which once served the Chester area, and when I'm saying Chester area, the greater area, very well. Not just local news, but local government and schools accountability, gone. What has risen is everyone is now becoming a journalist through social media. Do you know what ethics are involved in journalism for social media sites? I think it's around 0. But having said that, so now we are becoming that business of information. But again, the suspicions of government, you have to be careful. We have to be very mindful. People have to call us and find out the facts, do the research, making sure what we're saying is actually right, and we encourage that. We rely upon third parties and advocacy groups and partnerships. Call us out, but you got to know the knowledge and the facts. You know, the old adage is if you hear something 3 times, you start believing it, and that is our challenge.
I'd like to note Katie is very ethical, so don't question that.
Thanks so much.
That's really.
I do need to say, someone wrote nice notes on here. So they wrote, Katie, you're the real deal, REEL.
It's very precious. I don't know
think
who wrote
that's
these,
great.
but they're
That
very
would be
nice.
Natalie Spielman.
And I didn't even know what my theme was, but they wrote for me, best team captain ever. So whoever wrote that, that's how I
very
came up with the word team today. So somebody's doing something that I don't know.
Is that where all
I
the
like
sport? Is that where all the sports references
That's
came
right.
from? Because you're really
All-
killing it on that front today. I got to be honest.
Yeah.
Jesse, along those lines, how does transparency sort of make its way to your division in terms of the different departments that you oversee?
Yeah, sure. It's because I'm community development, which includes planning, zoning, roads, infrastructure, all the fun stuff that often people get excited about. It plays into everything. I will say that I'm an engineer by trade and education. We're not always the best at getting the word out here, but that's really where we start to engage folks like Katie to say, hey, we need to get a message out. How do we make sure that it's actually engaging with people and not just a static PowerPoint or something like that that's not going to bring people in? We've also really started to try to meet people where they are. We used to do public involvement as, step 1, book a school. Step 2, put something in the paper. Step 3, it was very boring. So we would send out 10,000 notices and have 5 people show up. It just wasn't effective. I think what she does and what she's been able to do, and we've been able to do it on a countywide basis, is much more engaging. The response has been better. We're able to meet people, where they are, which a lot of times is, sitting there on their phone.
To your point, Katie, you have had so many instances, I feel like, right? Of meeting, the idea of meeting people where they are, where they're not just like sending an email, right? They're commenting on a thing either because they need information, they have a question in general. And I would imagine that that's one of the things you do the most, right? Is actually sort of, for lack of a description, it's like the 21st century switchboard, which is essentially like handling the questions, but they're going to come in just through a different medium, so to speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to speak to Dr. Casey's point, a lot of those news outlets going away, those media resources that we had, now it's funneled into social media, and social media can be terrible sometimes. People are mean on Facebook. You get on there and they just yell at each other and they yell at us, and it is terrifying sometimes. But I think if you can get them to trust you through transparency, and if we as a county, which I think we do very well across the board, when we can engage them as a resident ourselves, when we say, I understand you, I see you, I know the issues that you're dealing with, you have a valid point, it does something different for the resident, for the person who's just shouting into the void, right? All of a sudden, you've sifted through the negativity and you've found, well, maybe there is something that they're asking.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just shouting into the void, and that's okay. So it's the therapy they needed that day, that's fine. But sometimes it truly is they're trying to seek out the right resources and they don't know where to start.
Matter of fact, I think we got a screenshot, and this is a real sort of situation where somebody had a question and folks on our end were able to answer. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how these kinds of things happen?
Yeah, so it is creating content, like Brad said, but it's also answering questions, funneling the right resources, talking to different departments, making sure that the information is correct. And someone had reached out and said, there's signs on Otterdale Road. Otterdale Road is a hot topic, I think, Jesse, right? But this person had reached out and said that there are signs here. Where did these signs come from? What do they mean? We've heard none of these updates about what this sign says. And I'm like, well, I don't know what this is. I've never heard of this either. So I reached out to Chesterfield Department of Transportation. They were able to get that information, answered the lady, and it sounds so simple. But when you read what she says back, right, and for those listening only, she's talking about how she's so thankful that our county as a whole continuously does this. Our communications department as a whole makes sure that we inform people well, and all of our departments collectively, they are the ones that are out here doing the work every day on the roads, in utilities, in parks and rec, that are making these things happen for our community. So to have that recognition of her saying, thank you so much for listening, and I noticed that Chesterfield is doing this across the board, is such a high praise for sure.
I think the interesting part about this too is, I don't know, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago, people pivoted away from actually trying to call someone and find out. Instead, they just posted it on social media and go, hey, does anyone know what this is? And they look for answers and expect them like that. It's been a sea change for us, but we certainly appreciate that folks monitor that stuff so they're not just shouting into the void, they're actually getting answers back.
Right. Stephanie, for Jesse's folks in transportation, Katie on social, transparency makes a lot of sense. How does that impact what you guys do in procurement? What does transparency mean for you guys?
Transparency is essential for us. It's embedded in everything we do. We don't operate and make purchases behind the scenes, behind closed doors. We operate as an open book. We want to make sure that there is no mystery in the process, that, as you said before, demystifying that. And I think Dr. Casey, hit the nail on the head when he said, it's not just about accountability, it's about trust. And we publish as much information on our website as we possibly can, because we don't want someone to not know what's going on. And whether you're a business or a resident, we want you to have confidence in the way that we're operating.
So, Katie, I want to bring it back to you for a second. In terms of the impact, right? One thing that's been pretty incredible to watch over the last year or so has been sort of that impact that those communications channels have had as they've grown and they've evolved and things of that nature. How would you explain the impact that Chesterfield's social media presence has had and is having? And what do you feel like is kind of like on the what's ahead? What's the next step for those channels?
Yeah, I feel like it's had an impact in 3 areas, starting with the residents. We hear from real residents online of just choosing how we put out this information is, it's informing them, right, of the things that are going on in their backyard. So we hear that daily. Thank you for taking the time to make this engaging so that I actually know about it. We actually have a lot of residents that have recently moved here, and they say, we follow your pages so we know what's going on in Chesterfield. And we're just a government account. Like that's really big, because it could be just the static stuff, but instead they are realizing the actual resources that exist for them in the county. It's very cool. I think it also hits employees. The Director of Communications, Dave Good, often says, okay, but how is this affecting our employees? And we hear employees get excited about what's going out, about where they work. They like to be included in it, and we see that a lot online as well. They're commenting back and forth to each other of like, come work with me. This is what I do every day. This is what it looks like. It's amazing. So it hits residents, it hits employees, and then I think it also just, from a government standpoint, a nonprofit standpoint, to a lot of you in the room, you've reached out to our communications team and asked for trainings. And so we've taken the time to show you like what we're doing differently. If you're interested in that, reach out. We would love to have a conversation. It's bigger than just Chesterfield. And so other localities are noticing that are in the government, nonprofits are noticing, businesses are noticing. And so I think as Chesterfield, we can be proud of that. For 2025, I think that looks like continuing to build trust for the community, to continue to highlight maybe the resources that people aren't familiar with, and hopefully we'll just continue to get Debbie, really. That's my biggest goal.
Stephanie, she's talking about what's ahead in 2025. Obviously, for your shop, a lot of changes, or maybe a lot's not the right term, but there have been changes in terms of the way that things are structured when it comes to local spend. And I know that's a big focus for you going into the new year. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what local spend is, especially to folks in a room like this, and why those changes in policy matter so much, and why they could make a big difference coming into next year?
Sure. Local spend is exactly what it sounds. It is making our purchases locally and, spending and putting that money back into the local economy. Our taxpayer dollars are going back to our community. And, our goal is always to make those local purchases if we can. That is, a huge source of support for the county. What has changed in fiscal year 25 is we've increased our small dollar thresholds, which allows greater access for our local and diverse vendors to be more competitive in that space. So, the message is, if you've been wanting to sell to the county, now is a great opportunity. Now is a great time for you to reach out. And again, we're a resource here to help you if you're unsure on how to go about doing that.
Jesse, along those same lines, on the transportation side, I feel like we talk a lot about road projects, and that makes sense, right? That we talk a lot about sort of where things are and how things are going. One of the things, obviously, on your front is mobility. I'm curious, what are some of the ways that Chesterfield's been working on that, and what do you feel like's ahead in 2025?
Yeah, so we have a really cool service that launched this past year with GRTC called Microtransit. It's within the Cloverdale district, so essentially runs along Hull Street from sort of the Chippenham area down to about Swift Creek. There's an app on your phone, GRTC Go app. You can book a ride. There's essentially a bus that comes to your curb, picks you up, and then will also take you home from wherever you are if you're within that specific district. It's a pilot program, but very new to the area. We're excited to see that. So, for example, Restaurant Week, if you live within that district, you want to go to, one of the local restaurants along Hull Street and you don't want to drive during happy hour, you can call the bus, it'll pick you up, you call the bus again, and it'll take you home. It takes about 15 minutes once you ask for the ride for it to get there. So really nice, convenient app, and it's entirely zero fare. So we're hoping to do are they TikToks or gritties or something?
Yes.
Gritties,
And
wow.
you will be dancing
With
in them.
Katie, I will not be dancing,
Yes.
but
Yes.
we're going to try to do
Stay tuned.
a
If you
video,
want to do
I
the
think.
gritty, we're all here.
Yeah.
You're welcome to it.
There will be no dancing.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Dr. Casey, we'll close it out here. I've been around here long enough to know that you're not a big fan of resting on your laurels. And I'm just curious, as you look ahead to not just what's ahead for us in the positive, but also in terms of trying to figure out the challenges, right? I think that's a big central, we talked about central tenets earlier, right? Not resting on your laurels isn't just the same thing as saying, like, I want to do better. It's also understanding where are the possibility of changes, right? It's essentially you're in a desert and you're looking to the horizon to try to figure out where those things might be. As you look to 2025, what do you see on that horizon?
Sure. Well, first I need to go back. There's 3 journalist institutions in the room, and when I'm saying that no ethical journalism, they do have the ethics between BizSense, RTD, and VPM. So the ones that are non-ethical, you know who you are, and we know who you are. But anyhow, as far as, again, going into 2025, we are Chesterfield County. You and 379,000 other people are Chesterfield County. We are a local government. It is something that people don't really understand as well and as much. Everyone knows their federal government through schooling and otherwise, media 24/7. People know what states do for the most part. They don't know who we are as much, especially people who come here from afar. Sometimes you can even grow up here and not necessarily know who we are. So we have a lot of work to do together to best espouse that. Regionally, we are the largest locality in the Richmond region. We're the largest locality in the 2 planning district commissions that we are a part of, from the North Carolina line all the way up to Hanover, as far west as Powhatan and east as Surrey County. So it's a large territory. We are the big person who tries to come in the room and act mature. We'll give our wisdom, time, and talent to anything that's important. But the accountability of those other localities rests with those people in those localities. They are family, so we're not going to squabble publicly about what somebody's doing right or wrong. But again, we're going to do all we can on our side of the shop to position Chesterfield to shine well. How others can shine with us is paths they can take. We're going to be doing so many things that are too numerous to list here. But again, some of the heavy lifts that we're going to do that involve participation and engagement involve our zoning ordinances. That is like a blueprint type exercise and a template for how people can live, work, play, and even learn. We need to make the zoning ordinances 2024, 2025, if you will, so we can figure out how people can live together betterly. Multi-generational might be more affordable. How we can pay attention to those in need. Where do people need to live that have addiction recovery issues, domestic violence issues, and other things that are adverse to their lives that can impact your household at a moment's notice. So we're trying to be mindful of everyone in Chesterfield County. On the recreational side of the shop, we want people to have a good experience here. We basically reinvest all of your lodging taxes. When I say they're your lodging taxes, unless you spend a night in a hotel here, you're not paying any taxes. So if you are paying lodging taxes, that's between you and your maker. But that's another story. But anyhow, we invest your lodging taxes into everything sports, visitation, entertainment. So some of the niceties we're putting into our parks and creating new parks and experiences, that's that side of the shop. You as businesses, your business license tax, we reinvest that into economic development purposes. When we try and do site acquisitions or maybe even beginnings of infrastructure for a certain site, you are the leaders in helping us position your monies for that purpose, so that we can be mindful of the precious household tax dollar and where it can go. But, there's going to be some amazing projects that are going to be coming on, and I'll just give an example of one. The Dutch Gap area. For those that don't know the word Dutch Gap, it is a large geographical territory. The history of that goes back thousands of years. It's not just dirt, it's a lot of water, a lot of ways that we can have history and nature come together as never before in perhaps all of Virginia. So I know we're working hard on creating a master plan that may need your help to do that. And again, we're not perfect, as I've said before, but we want to perfect, if you will, what we try and do, but we can't do it alone.
In that video we showed a few minutes ago, or I guess it was a while ago now, Katie was like, we did it. Guys, I think we did it. So I very much appreciate your time. Appreciate all of you being here for the first live recording of the podcast. Hopefully that was fun. Hopefully they'll ask me to do it again sometime. Thank you very much for all that you guys did and for being here today. I really appreciate it.
All right, now make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's Chesterfield, Virginia, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield, Virginia, all one word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow the podcast or subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that you get your shows. And if you'd like to leave us a rating or review, we'd greatly appreciate it. As always, a video version of the show is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website at Chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit feedback anytime, make suggestions, or just reach out to us. You can also watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. Lastly, you can check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us to find a number of different ways for you to connect with Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent and Media Services for all they do. My thanks to you for joining us today. So, from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care. From blogs to podcasts, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Weekly video segments and newsletters, social media, the latest community news.
And this is your Chesterfield News Minute for September 19th.
How to get in touch, and everything in between. If you want to know about Chesterfield County, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us. Connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.